Hi, everybody. Welcome to our December Higher Education Tableau user group meeting. I'm going to put a couple of links in the chat box that you can utilize to join Slack, our HETUG Slack workspace. If you haven't done so already, this is where we do a lot of communication about the group and help each other out. And we are recording the session. We will send that link out later, just to let you all know. It usually takes a few days to a week. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. Today's agenda, we're going to let you come off mute, make any announcements. Anybody have any information that they want to share with the group, any events, any positions that they're hiring for? If you don't feel comfortable coming off mute, you can always put it in the chat box or on our open positions Slack channel. Any takers? All right. Well, aside from that, we're going to meet not one, but two community members. Crystal Baker is going to be first up, and I'll be wrapping it up later on in the day. We're going to have a special presentation on Tableau Prep from Roy Lee, and I'm going to show you some tips and tricks for using for creating MadLibs in Tableau, which is a fun holiday themed viz that I do every year. And then we'll have our wrap up and chat in our breakout rooms. So I'll turn it over to Roshni. She's going to introduce our first community member.
Hi. So, like we promised in the promo for this meeting, we're going to have two community members. We're going to start off today with Crystal Baker from Indiana University. She is one of our higher ed TUG co-leads. The way this is going to work is I'm essentially going to ask her a list of questions. We have this list of like 10 questions. I'm just going to ask them until we run out of time. And Crystal's hopefully going to answer them. And that's how it will go. That's how it works, right? Like that's how the answering works. Okay. So Crystal, tell us a little about yourself and describe your role and your team.
Hey team, I'm Crystal Baker from Indiana University Bloomington. I am a business analyst, but basically I'm the team lead for the admissions data team. And so I would say Tableau is like 10% of my job, maybe even less. And I'm in this role because I like to plan and I like to talk. And I volunteered to be kind of one of the organizers for the TUG. So, you know, do I use Tableau? A little bit. I would definitely classify myself as a beginner.
So when you are using Tableau, what kind of data do you work with?
So we're doing student data, so top of the funnel. We're situated within admissions operations. So we get data from students as young as like 7th and 8th grade, a lot of form submissions. So a lot of dirty data that then we've got to figure out how to inject into the rest of the student information system. So a lot of what we do has to do with cleanup, kind of looking for anomalies, fixing bad things.
So how do you use Tableau in that process?
Yeah, so personally, I use it to kind of test the things that my team does. So we've got a ton of cross-tab vizzes that are basically just showing me things that, again, my team has deployed, or like looking for trends in huge data sets, or just trying to find bad things. The team, so admissions at IU is using Tableau for everything from how many apps did we get today, how many apps did we get this time last year, just kind of that longitudinal analysis. We use it to plan our recruitment territories. So we've got maps that show us where our students are coming from and where maybe some gaps are in our enrollment management strategy. But again, like my team we're really in the weeds. Like we live in crosstabs.
So you mentioned maps. Is that your favorite Tableau feature? Or is there some other feature in Tableau or just in data viz in general that you kind of have as your favorite?
I'm gonna say I like stuff I can do from my iPad, because I'm kind of project manager analyst role. Like I'm not really a viz designer. So all the stuff they rolled out like maybe a couple years ago that you could do from a web browser, like you could actually change elements in the viz from your iPad. I use that all the time, or even just like refreshing extracts from the web browser is super nice on Tableau server. And then my most used thing that I do is, you know how you can set all your filters and basically save it as a view and like a public view, and then you can share that view with other people. So if I see like a problem, I can save it as a view and then send that out to the team of analysts that can actually fix it.
Nice. Custom views. They're kind of amazing.
Yeah, totally.
If there's one thing that you wish current you could tell newbie you about Tableau or about data in general, what would that be?
I would say being bad at something is the first step to being good at something. So it's okay to be bad at things because that's how we get good at things.
So can you give us an example of a time that you were bad at something that helped you sort of get to less bad?
Date part is my enemy.
Oh my God.
So yeah, because again, like I've lived in project management world and like latency times and just trying to see, you know, are we green with our operations? And so trying to set those calculated fields to show me like, are we late? Are we good? Especially if a date is not really a date. If it's just like a string of characters that looks like a date. It took me so long.
You mean the ones with year of 0000, those ones?
Yeah, or like the whole word spelled out, trying to convert that to a date. Like, again, it's just like bad data, fixing that stuff and normalizing it for sure. It's okay to be bad at that.
Excellent. I'm going to ask one other question. Is there anything else you'd want to share with us today?
Why, yes, there is. Today is my birthday.
Woohoo! Happy birthday.
Yeah, thanks. What a gift this was to get to do this on my birthday.
So it is now time for the lightning round, and we do have some sort of birthday-ish related questions for you. Since your birthday is sort of smack dab in the middle of some holidays, Thanksgiving or New Year's?
I like Thanksgiving because of the food and the sports. So avid sports fan over here.
Well then, volleyball or basketball?
Yeah, you told me you were going to ask this because those are my two. You see my posters up here. Huge fan of volleyball and basketball. I played myself and I still coach. So I'm going to say volleyball now because it's easier on the knees.
So you mentioned you still coach. So coaching versus playing, what do you prefer?
Oh, playing, absolutely. Do that until you fall over.
That sounds fun. So you mentioned volleyball, spiking versus blocking. Just so you guys know, Crystal had a preview of these lightning round questions too, and spiking was the one volleyball term that I knew other than serving. So she had to help me come up with this one.
This is again the perks of being in the steering committee is that you get to influence your own interview questions. I'm going to say blocking because we do Scrum, and so that's sort of like work related, right? So I can talk about blockers. So blocking is more prevalent in my life.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So coming up, there are some holidays, and there's probably some time off. So are you more of a staycation person or a vacation person?
Vacation. I've missed traveling with COVID, so would love to get back in that groove.
Beach or mountains?
Yes. I don't know.
All right then. So how about for volleyball, beach versus indoor volleyball?
Let's say indoor because it's a more strategic game, I think. Personal opinion only. And then it's kind of, you see different varieties of like different genders, different ages, different styles. It's just been around a little bit longer, I think, internationally. So there's just a lot more to see.
Okay. So you mentioned that you were a volleyball coach. So one of the things that one of the songs that we had playing that I had to stop a little early was a Mariah Carey song that had Ariana Grande in it. I'm a little bit of a Mariah Carey fan. They're both known for the whistle register, which is like being able to sing really super high, pretty much sounds like a whistle. So when you're coaching, do you prefer using a whistle or your voice to get your players' attention?
I think early in my career, I used whistle a lot, but now I try to yell, although like we're coaching right now with masks, so they can't hear me. So I've been clapping at my team lately. So I'll say I'll pass on the whistle, anything other than the whistle.
All right. Well, since it's your birthday, there are some traditional birthday foods, cake versus cupcake.
Cupcake because icing is gross.
All right. Bar charts versus lollipop charts. We have to bring it back to data.
Bar charts, they're easier to read.
All right. Bar charts versus donut charts.
I still think a simple bar chart. I mean, I just like really, really clear, obvious things.
I'm with you there, but donuts are more delicious. I'm just throwing that out there.
True.
All right. So
one could argue that they serve things at bars that are delicious too, though, Roshni. So if you're going to go with the
cookie
food
bars
analogy, yeah.
Oh, I never thought about that.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, now we're gonna have to rephrase all of these things.
Right.
Next time. So, as we do every month, our plan is to have one of these spotlights in every meeting. So if you're interested in being in the spotlight like Crystal is right now, or like Ginny will be later in the meeting, just let us know. Feel free to catch us on Slack, or send an email to the Higher Ed Tugs Gmail address, which we will post back in the chat at some point again later today. So that's it. I'm going to pass it back to Crystal.
Yeah, it's actually easy. Again, one of the perks to being on the steering committee is that you get to just follow yourself. So I get to introduce our actual guest speaker. So Roy Lee is the Chief Analytics and Data Officer at NYU Stern School of Business. So you can see here on his profile that he is super knowledgeable about data strategy and all the tools that we use, including Tableau as well as Tableau Prep. And we're just so excited to hear from him as he does a deeper dive into using Prep to process the data within the business school. So please welcome Roy Lee. And Roy, I will turn it to you to share your screen, and I'll also be facilitating a Q&A. So as questions pop in, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll try to work through those kind of first in, first out after Roy finishes his presentation. So Roy, take it away.
Great. So I'm going to share my screen, and you notice that that profile picture is pre-COVID. This is me post-COVID with the beard, but I've seen it a lot. I think a lot of people are having a sporting COVID facial hair, but yeah, this is a new look for me. But thank you for having me. First off, I want to thank all the TUG leadership for creating this forum, for us to be able to really engage and learn from each other. I know it's not an easy task to be able to create the right programming and create the brand awareness to get a group like this underway, especially when this is on top of your regular day jobs. But clearly the number of people who've attended all the sessions, it really has hit, clearly has a demand, and sort of resonates for all of us who are working in higher ed and trying to further our organizations to become more decision-centric. So thank you again for creating this community. So my name is Roy Lee. I oversee data and analytics at NYU Stern. And today I'm going to be going through a quick presentation talking a little bit about Tableau Prep, what it can do, a few use cases of how we use Tableau Prep. And then the presentation is going to take shape in two parts. The first part, I'm going to go through just a PowerPoint deck. And then the second part, I'm going to go through a simplified demo of a use case that we've used Tableau Prep around faculty data and metrics. This is really meant to be an introduction. So apologies for anybody who is well-versed in Tableau Prep in that regard. So what is Tableau Prep? Tableau Prep is a fairly recent tool that Tableau launched a few years ago in 2018 to really help users manage the particularities in and around data cleaning based on how Tableau would optimally like to read tidy data. To be honest, when it first came out, I wasn't exactly sure how it could be used, or it wasn't very clear to me. But then after TC19 and getting introduced to it at an in-person session, I was blown away about how useful it was. And now I'm a full convert. I always use Tableau Prep as an intermediary from my data files to Tableau Desktop. The other thing about Tableau Prep, which is amazing, is that like very similarly to Tableau, it's a lot of like low code, no code. So the same calculations you're doing in Tableau Desktop, you can use it in Tableau Prep, and you don't need to have a programming background, for example, to clean. Okay. So oops, let me go back. What Tableau Prep is designed to do is allows you to combine shape and clean your data for analysis. In Tableau Prep, what you can do is you build flows, which allows you to create rules or steps and a workflow to automate your data cleaning process. So how have we used Tableau Prep? So what I'm about to share with you is probably a familiar story to all of you in higher ed, but at Stern, we live in a very decentralized organization structure where the decisions on what CRM or platform that's being used is often made at the business school level. What this does is it creates a fragmented ecosystem of different data silos. In this particular use case, Oracle PeopleSoft is our registration system, and 1220, our careers team uses 1220 to host career data. So here on the left-hand side, what you're seeing is basically a snapshot of data in PeopleSoft, and on the right-hand side, you're seeing a snapshot of the data that's in 1220. So clearly you see that like in PeopleSoft, years of experience is a number, in 1220 it's a string. We have some differences in terms of naming conventions on programs. And for example, visa status is a field in PeopleSoft that we're using that to determine work authorization status. So because there's no natural integration between the two systems, what happens is our career team has to download this data from PeopleSoft, then transform and do all the data cleaning, and then be able to get it ready for upload for 1220. The way they've been doing it has been using Excel. So this is just a screenshot of a worksheet in Excel where they keep track of all their rules, and clearly they're using like their concatenation, VLOOKUP, find and replace to do all of this cleaning. And this is very time intensive, but also because this is manual, and because they have to do this every semester for the incoming students, it's also something that for thousands of students, it's also prone to error. But using Tableau Prep now, what they can do is write these rules into Tableau Prep once, and every time there's new data, they just need to replace the data and then press play. And then what we'll do is it'll run those clean jobs and output them a file that is already pre-cleaned to be able to upload into 1220. So this is an example where you can use Tableau Prep and instead of just putting it into dashboard, for example. This is a way you can use Tableau Prep as sort of a lightweight ETL tool. The second use case we have around Tableau Prep is around combining different data sets, but in particular, the standardization of a reference data set. So in this example, we use Slate as our primary admissions database. And again, we use 1220 as our career data. So a career database. So again, this is a data silos issue where we're collecting data about the same people in different places. So in this example, the top part is a snapshot of our Slate data. The bottom part is a snapshot of our 1220 data. And of course, because we have Campus ID to link the two, we can certainly join the information and see this combined data. However, the real issue is around this reference data set. So in Slate, what we have in our application, we have an open text field for a company name, undergraduate colleges names, and clearly you can see also country, we have different standards. So if we wanted to do some analysis where we were looking at, would it be interesting for us to understand the industries that people are coming from and where they eventually place out? So for example, if we know that look, we have a lot of people coming from the finance industry. Where are they placing when they finish their MBA degree? Are they going to finance, or are they going somewhere else, to tech or media and entertainment, for example? We weren't able to do that because of a lot of this. The work to have to standardize this was just a lot of work to be able to do. It was an obstacle. So using Tableau Prep and a specific feature in Tableau Prep and Server, where they have something called data roles and a function called grouping, pronunciation, and spelling, what we were able to do is take all our application data with all the different variations of company name and be able to create a standardized field that matches up with our career data. So this is in line where now, the outcome is that for someone like JP Morgan Chase, we're able to see how many applications come from JP Morgan Chase, where were they placed out to, how many exec ed programs, for example, did we do, all the different touch points we have for industry. So this is an example of using data standardization, Prep, to help with standardization of some key data. The final use case is really that Tableau Prep is just an incredibly useful tool to have in terms of giving you flexibility in doing your dashboarding work or data exploration sort of work. You can quickly add data, you can quickly create new variables like feature engineering to build new variables in your data set. It also helps declutter your workbook. So for example, let's say you have a few nested like calculations in Tableau Desktop. Instead of having to have all those calculated fields in Tableau Desktop, you can do them in Prep and then bring it back into Tableau Desktop as like a static field, and so that it helps declutter your workbook. But also the other benefit of that is if you are doing some of the calculations in Prep, it also helps your performance for your workbook, so that instead of having to run those calculations that could be done beforehand, the calculations that are happening in your workbook are only the ones that are necessary. So from a performance standpoint, it's also very helpful. In the demo I'm going to show you, again, it's a simplified demo of us taking data from different sources and how we sort of treated it for our faculty data. The next few slides I'm going to go through I'm going to go through fairly quickly so that we have time for the demo. But in terms of functionality and features of what Tableau can do, you can do joins, you can do all different kind of joins, whether it's inner, left, right, or full joins. You can filter data, so you can filter data before it goes into Tableau Desktop. If, for example, if you only wanted men or you wanted evaluations of greater than 3, you can pre-filter that data in Tableau Prep. Various ways of being able to filter data. The transformation rules, for example, if you wanted to create new variables. Some basic clean step to be able to remove punctuation, trim spaces, pivoting data. And then aggregation. So aggregation in Tableau Prep is a way that you can summarize your data before it goes into desktop. And basically summarization is aggregation in Tableau Prep is Tableau Prep's version of basically a level of detail calculation. So in desktop, you'll do a fix, for example, to be able to help summarize some of your data. You can do that in Tableau Prep, for example, and then so that calculation is done beforehand if you wanted to summarize your data. And here I included, I think we're going to be sharing the deck as well, is that here are just some other useful functions that I've used that I put on this slide. So we're going to move on to the demo, but before this last slide, I did include any of my contact details. So if you have any questions, please let me know. So as we move to the demo, just need to see why my screen just froze. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so moving to the demo, this is basically Tableau Prep. And you'll see that the interface with the connection is very similar to Tableau Desktop. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove the Zoom bar, but here I'm going to load in this dummy data set. So here I'm going to load in a data set called dummy workday data. And what this is representative of is an example of some data that we might have in Workday, which for us at Stern is our employee database. So here, as soon as you load the data, in an ideal world, this would actually be a server-side connection, but in this case, I'm just using a CSV file. What you're seeing here is all the variables in my data set. And in this case, because this is, and I'm sorry, my mouse keeps on freezing, but in this data set, what we're seeing is basically your basic Workday employment information. We have first name, last name, total years of service, gender, department, and faculty rank. And then, so this gives me a preview of the different data variables. And then here, you'll see there's a little plus sign. And when I select that, here are the different options that I can sort of add to my flow. So in this case, I'm going to just do the clean step. And when I click the clean step, you'll notice that all my variables show up here. And this is where an example of, let's say I didn't want faculty rank in my data, I can deselect that, for example, and you can see that when I go to this clean step, that variable is sort of missing. But in this case, I do want it back, so I'm going to click on it. So once you had the clean step, you'll see that your screen is broken up into three sort of sections. The first section is what's called the flow pane. The middle section is called the data profile pane. And then the last one is called the data grid pane. So the data grid, for example, gives you the output of all your raw data. But what's really useful is this data profile pane. And what's really useful about that, especially if this data is new to you and you're trying to understand your data, is that immediately you see that there are some visualizations that's built in this data profile. And what this does is it gives you a profile of your data. So in this case, if I look at gender, for example, I can see that there are 3 unique values. There are male, female, and null. And you can see across, if I was looking at this as a new data set, I'd probably say like, oh, from a data quality standpoint, it looks pretty good. If I'm talking about sparsity of data, most of the data is full. There's very few null records. But immediately here, I can also see that like 68% of my data set is male, 31% of my data set is female. Or if I was looking at this from department, I can see that like finance has the most faculty members with accounting, management, organizations, or something like my tenure faculty, for example, tenure track faculty is considerably more than our clinical and adjunct. So this gives me a feel of what my data might look like. Also, for example, if I was looking at sort of campus ID, you'll notice that like for us, campus ID is a unique value or number. And here I can quickly see that like there's an outlier here. And when I click on this outlier, you'll notice because I know that university ID should be unique, that only one person should have a unique campus ID that's unique to them, this thing throws me out that there are some outliers. So when I click on it, I can see that, look, there's 2 records with 2 people with the same university ID. Same thing with net ID. So if I look at net ID, which is our username, it should also be unique. But here it tells me that like something's off. There are a couple people who have user IDs. So if I click on both of them, I can see that like, yes, there is a couple people who have the same user ID. They have different campus IDs. And frankly, this is just a mistake when I was creating this dummy data set. So, but it was interesting to know that this is one of the ways that you can highlight it. So I'm just, for the sake of purpose, I'm going to exclude these from this example. So I just simply right-clicked it and I excluded the data set. And here you'll notice that like, yes, there's also someone who has the last name Jordan, but indeed is 2 different people, 2 different user IDs and 2 different university IDs. So this is an example of like a Workday data. But what I want to do now is layer this in with information about our course registration data. So here, I'm going to add a data set, and this data set I'm going to add is our fall 2019 course data. From here, I'm going to add another clean step so we can see the profile of our data. And you can see that this is data that would represent information that we're getting from our Oracle PeopleSoft database, which holds all registration information. So here I can see the course name, I can see the university ID, I can see credit, what kind of courses, whether it was co-taught or not registrations, which is provided in a histogram. So immediately I can see that like in this dummy data set that like the peak, our largest class size bin is from 50 to 55, for example. So it gives me a little bit of information here, but you notice that there is no faculty department or faculty rank. So clearly what I'm going to do here is I'm going to join this registration information with the workday information so that I can bring the values. So if, for example, if I wanted to cut this data to be able to see the breakdown of courses by department or by rank, I can be able to do that. But before I do that, I'm going to create a couple transformation rules. So for the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to do term code. So you'll see here is that in our registration system, we have something called term code. And term code represents a semester for a particular academic year. So even though Tableau recognizes it as a number, because it represents a dimension, we're going to change this to a string. So I did that by clicking this little icon and changing it from a number to a string. From here, the way the calculation works, the way that you interpret this from at least our registration system is this code, the two middle digits represents the year, and this last digit 8 represents the term. So in this case, this represents the fall 2019 semester. The thing is for, unless you're deep into registration or you're deep into like doing this type of work, this is really hard for a regular business user to understand. So let's say I wanted to create a field that translates this term code into something that's a little bit more interpretable, right? So let's say I say this is a semester. I'm going to create a field, a variable called semester. I'm going to use a case statement that translates this so that 1198 represents fall 2019. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another value, even though it's not in this data set, to future because I know this is going to be in the future, right? So, and we'll see what this does in the next step. So I'm going to add this calculated field. I'll enter it in, and then you'll see that when I bring this over, you'll see that every time there is a 1198, it's going to represent as fall 2019. Another transformation rule I'm going to use also before we do the join is I'm going to do something around our course credit right here. So for faculty, when we assess faculty, every full-time faculty member is required to teach a certain amount of courses at Stern. And the way we have our courses is broken down by course credits. So our 3 credit courses and our 4 credit courses are represented as full credit courses, and our 2 credit and our 1.5 credit courses are represented as half credit courses. 2 is half of 4, 1.5 is half of 3. So if I was a faculty member and I was assigned or required to teach 2 courses for my contractual obligations, I could either choose to teach, well, I'm either assigned to teach 2 full credit courses, or I could teach 4 half credit courses. But in this case, same thing with interpretation. Let's say like I didn't want to have to do this math or do this calculation behind the scenes in Tableau desktop, and I want to save that effort by doing it in Tableau Prep. What I can do is I can do a calculation beforehand, and then this is just a simple if statement where I'm going to be converting the credit course credit into credit weight, so that if I bring this over and I select 4, you can see that the highlighted blue shows me that's related to, that makes it 1. If it's 3, it's 1. If it's 2, it's a half. It's 1.5, it's a half. So that, like, I created 2 transformation rules to like layer, and mainly I did it for interpretability in my analysis. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to join this data again, and then I'm going to put the join in. And this time I'm going to do the join clause here, where I'm going to match campus ID, which is represented in Workday, and then I'm going to use university ID, which is the same thing, but in our SIS registration system. So from here, when I do the join, you can see that the join results for the inner join represents 116 rows of data. And this, if you click on the data here, this 38 represents all the faculty in our Workday data that has not taught a course in fall 2019. And then this 7 here represents all the courses in our data set that doesn't have faculty data in our Workday system. So this is one where you can quickly kind of see what the results are. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to output this data. And from here, I'm going to output this data into a format called a hyper extract. And a hyper extract is a file format that's specifically for Tableau. And so I'm going to upload this hyper extract. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Tableau here, and then I'm going to, did I run the job? Here, oh, here it is. I'm going to ingest the hyper extract. And then from here, I'm going to now use it for analysis. So here you can see my Tableau, my data has fed in. And then let's say I brought in something like course name, and then I brought semester. And then I brought number of records. And then let's say I'm going to do the totals, total grand totals. And you can see that right here that there should be 116 values, which is exactly what we showed in Tableau Prep. But now let's say I have spring data. Let's say I have more updated data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this connection. I'm going to add, let's say, spring data. So let's say this is now spring. I'm going to bring in my spring 20 data, and now I'm going to union it with this data set. And then I'm going to add this to this clean step. And from here, you can see that like that pre-clean that I did with the spring 20 data, it automatically recognized that that's the new semester. It wrote those rules. All the credit weight is taken care of. And then I'm going to press play. And I'm going to run the job again. And then I'm going to go to Tableau Desktop. And then from here, I'm going to refresh my data set. And for example, you'll see that now the spring data set automatically came in. Another thing, as when I was talking about additional variables, one of the, you'll notice that like in my data set, there is no data called program. So let's say I wanted to now add basically identifiers so that I can understand that which, like, does this program belong to our MBA program? Is it a PhD program? So I'm going to write the rule here, which says we use section codes basically to identify a program. I put the program in, I'm going to run the data role, the job, and then I'm going to go back to my Tableau desktop. I'm going to refresh my screen here, refresh it. And then if I go into here, you'll see the program automatically comes up. So for example, at this point, if I wanted to then break down and see how many courses are from our MBA program or MS program or PhD, this is how I would normally go back and forth to be able to do this, analysis. So the final thing I wanted to show you is then this is an example of a real flow that we've created. The only difference here is that instead of using flat files, we use Salesforce as an organization. So one thing that's really beneficial about using Salesforce is that there's a lot of pre-cleaning that actually ends up happening building into Salesforce. So a lot of the time we're not having pre-cleaning, but also joining up data. So there's some things that we don't necessarily need to do, but these are Salesforce tables. And we've created, this is an example of an aggregation where we summarize some data and then rejoin them back to be able to pull them in. And then what we did is we built a series of dashboards. So here's, this is an example of a dashboard that we did about workload analysis. So one of the things that we talked about just a second ago is that we measure faculty based on the number of courses they teach. So this is an example of a dashboard where every line, we hid the names here, but this would normally have names of faculty. And this reference line represents the number of courses that a faculty is required to teach. And then what we did is the bar represents the number of sections that faculty member actually taught. And from here, our departments now are able to filter through this so that if they wanted to see the faculty who just met their load, how many faculty have taught over their load, how many faculty taught under their load, they're able to do this in this view. The other dashboard that we have, this is an example of a scatter plot where we have average class size and average CEs. So it creates basically this magic quadrant where everybody on the upper right-hand side represents faculty who have taught above average class sizes and above average CEs, and people on the lower bottom quadrant would represent all faculty who are teaching lower than average CEs and lower than average class size. Each of the dots represents a faculty member. The size of the dots represents the number of sections taught, and then using a highlighter, we're able to start to evaluate. Departments can be able to see how do departments relate to the average. Same thing with like rank. Can we see how tenure track performance is versus adjunct and et cetera? And the last chart that I'm going to go through is just this dummy data chart where we have a couple metrics. We have a distribution of faculty taught, and we use just simple filters to be able to adjust for different views. But this is so I'll end there. This is an example of how you could use Prep to help clean your data and deal with some of the data problems that you have when you're doing your dashboarding. So I'll turn it over to any questions if there are any.
Hey, Roy, we do have a couple questions, although we were sort of time-stamped to stop at 3:45. So I think I'll just choose the first three, if that's okay, just to be conscious of the time. So the first one is maybe something that has to do with scope and kind of licensing and your general feel for someone with lots of experience in making decisions about data. And I'm going to combine a couple questions into this. So curious to hear your thoughts about using Prep in a broader ETL sense. So can you speak to how customizable is it? You know, are there options for writing code or scripts? Are there options for scheduling automations to run overnight or on some other type of schedule? Or do you use other tools to kind of manage your ETL kind of at that enterprise data warehousing level?
So I think from practicality standpoint, I mean, I think if you're doing large, like I called it a lightweight ETL tool. You know, I think if you're going to do anything heavy duty, you're going to look at other products like an Alteryx or anything else that might, you know, with in turn that comes with a heavier licensing cost to it. You know, I think that why Tableau Prep is an amazing tool is that it empowers any business user who doesn't have programming background, who faces this pain of having to do it, data cleaning. It allows them to do it. On the scheduling side of things, if you have Tableau server, what you can do is you can upload flows that does allow you to automate the refresh from your data. The only thing is it really depends on where your data is. If you have a flat file that it's coming from, then you're going to have to obviously upload that flat file. If you're using it from a server, like you're using, let's say, Salesforce as a database, then what you can do is you can do in Tableau Desktop, it will set up a task so that it pulls data and constantly refreshes your dashboard. But you need Tableau Server to do it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate just the nod to the different licensing costs too, since we're all at so many different institutions and so many different levels of permissions. Could you talk a little bit about the way that Tableau Prep might write out to other tools? So there was a question about whether it could actually clean up an Excel file. Can you save those flows and reuse them in additional flows or duplicate them? What are those capabilities?
Yeah, no, I think once you get the hang of using Tableau Prep, what you can do is you can string together a number of flows called subflows. So start from an architecting standpoint, like when you're starting out, you might want to start small, but in the long run, when you're thinking about basically breaking apart flows so that it's compartmentalized, that probably is a good strategic way to do it. In terms of output, it's not very extensible in terms of how much like you can do it as a CSV, you can do it as a hyper extract, and maybe someone else might know the other ones. I don't know in terms of like fully, but those are the two that I primarily use. It's basically text file, CSV, and then as a hyper extract.
Yes, well, thank you so much. You can see the questions in the chat too, if you've got some time, or if those of you even that are on the call want to engage with Prep that can speak to some of the capabilities of the tool within the chat, we can continue this conversation both in chat as well as on Slack. But I want to thank you so much for this amazing demo, Roy. We really appreciate it. And thank you for sharing all this information with us.
Well, thank you for having me. Thanks.
We'll have to arrange some Tableau gift cards for you, Roy. I think we could probably make that happen from the Tableau store just in time for Christmas. So now it's time to do another community member spotlight. So we'll transition over to Jenny and Roshni for the next piece of the puzzle. Welcome, Jenny.
All right. Thanks, Crystal, and thanks, Roy. That was great. So many of you know Ginny. She is the key organizer of Analytics Day at Appalachian State. She is all over the Tableau public and is one of our co-leads. She's the one who always opens and closes our meetings because she's just awesome at that. So we're going to learn a little bit more about Ginny with our second community member spotlight today. So Ginny, same question as I started with Crystal. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do at work and what your team does.
So I'm an enrollment management business intelligence analyst. It's a mouthful. Essentially, my job is sort of the go-between from our institutional research office and our enrollment management folks. And so I spend a lot of my time creating dashboards that are focused on, our point in time enrollment, our admissions funnels, our retention, and then I also do a little bit with student success, with surveys, and with course grades and such.
So what is your favorite Tableau project that you've worked on at work? We'll get to the non-work stuff later.
All right, so my favorite one is probably my co-enrollment performance dashboard, which essentially looks at if students take 2 courses together in the same semester, are they more likely to be successful, unsuccessful, or kind of break even in that combination of courses? And the idea is that advisors could use that to determine when they're advising students, maybe you shouldn't take these 2 courses together. Students haven't historically been successful with that combination. And maybe, it would be usable during a curriculum redesign as well to determine, maybe these courses shouldn't be co-requisites or something like that.
Cool. So you're talking about courses. How did you learn Tableau?
I am mostly self-taught. So I've been using Tableau since 2012. I think it was maybe version 7 was the first one I used. I can't even remember now. And it was very much point and click, drag around till it looks like I think it should look. I had no background in data at all. So it was a very long journey to actually learn Tableau.
So how did you actually get introduced to Tableau? If you weren't doing data, how did Tableau become a thing?
My boss at the time, and this was several jobs ago, she said, I've heard of this new program. Well, it wasn't new, but new to us. I've heard this program. It's called Tableau. I want you to check it out, see if it's something we could use. And it was so much fun. And it was, I know I said that my journey to learn it was very long, and it is because they're always coming out with new things and they're always improving the product. But as far as actually getting started, it was very fast to pick up and just be able to create something. So I had a lot of fun with it from the get-go, and I always wanted to learn more and know more and do more with it.
Well, what specifically in Tableau do you want to learn more about?
Right now, parameter actions, they baffle me. I've figured out set actions, but the parameter actions, I haven't been able to utilize them correctly in a dashboard.
I'm on the opposite side of the fence. I can parameter action like the best of them, but sets and set actions, I'm like, ugh. That's the noise I actually make every time I have to think about sets.
All right, well, you and I should pair up and we'll teach each other then.
Or maybe if there's folks in the audience who are good at either of those or have recently learned them, we're open to sessions like you're about to see from Ginny in a second. So what is your favorite Tableau feature?
Probably parameters, even though I don't know how to do them. They're so useful.
Okay. If there's one thing that you wish you could tell Tableau newbie you, what is that thing?
So if I could tell myself anything, it would be that LOD calculations are not available now, but they will be. And that was, back in 2012.
Right. And I mean, and even now, sometimes you don't need LODs if you're using
It's true.
relationships and aggregating your data. All of these
Mhm.
new features that Tableau just keeps pushing out. And hopefully we can use the space to sort of learn about some of them.
Well, being that I didn't have a data background, I didn't know what an LOD calculation was, and I didn't know that I needed one for what I was trying to do back then. But I could have told myself that. Just be patient. It'll be here eventually.
So I'm going to segue into the lightning round, and then we're going to get back to how do you use Tableau outside of work. So if you've checked out Ginny's Tableau public page, which is linked from the event page for this meeting, you'll see a lot of holiday stuff all over her Tableau public. So we're going to take on this holiday theme and ask a bunch of holiday themed questions. So Christmas song, Deck the Halls or Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer?
Deck the halls. I actually really don't like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer that much.
Well, too bad. One of your next questions is Donner or Blitzen. Which of those reindeer do you prefer?
Neither. I'll go with Vixen. Thank you.
What about the Grinch versus Jack Frost?
The Grinch.
Who's your favorite Scrooge? Scrooge in the Muppet Christmas Carol or Scrooge McDuck?
In the Muppets.
Really? I thought you would have gone the duck route.
Well, I do love ducks, but.
All right. Jingle Bells. We've got the original version, the original, normal sleigh bells, whatever version, and then we've got the Batman Smells version. Which one do you prefer?
I like both, but the original is so nostalgic for me. So I typically go with that one. And I'm talking about the full, dashing through the snow with that.
That's the one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so one of the other things that we've seen and heard from Ginny is that she has a lot of animals, mostly of the bird variety, including a parakeet that tried to Zoom bomb her last time, I think.
That's right.
So 7 geese a laying or 3 French hens?
I'm going to go with 3 French hens because 7 geese in a yard is too many. We only have 3 geese, and that's enough.
All right. So to Tableau a little bit, team floating or team tiled?
I use both, but tiled more often.
Okay, sets or parameters?
Oof. Again, they're both good for different things, but generally parameters.
Okay. So Crystal had mentioned, there are dessert bars. So I did some Googling and found a couple of dessert bars. Fig Newton bar charts or lemon bar charts?
Ooh, lemon.
Okay. You're gonna like this one. Appalachian State pie charts or Appy State pie charts? Hold on. I'm gonna try to get this one right. I can't even do it. Donut North Carolina State University charts.
Well,
That was bad.
obviously Appalachian pie charts.
Of course. So pie charts or waffle charts?
I use pie more often, so yeah, I'll go with pie.
Okay. So I mentioned earlier, you do a lot of Tableau outside of work. So tell us a little bit about your Tableau outside of work. And feel free to take the screen away as soon as you want to.
Yeah, so it's funny you should mention that because I do MadLibs. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. So for anyone who's not familiar, MadLibs have you fill in blanks to change the words of a song or a story or what have you. And I do it every year with different Christmas carols. This is just an example from a few years ago of the 12 Days of Christmas rewrite. So to get away from work and higher ed data just for a little while, we're going to learn how to make Christmas Carol MadLibs in Tableau. So like I mentioned, I started these way back in 2016, 17, 18, something like that. It was before Tableau Prep. And So it took me a little while to figure out how to do it, but I was able to do it because of two things. That was the Tableau Excel add-in, which for anyone who has not heard of it, hasn't used it, Tableau claims that it is obsolete now that you have Tableau Prep and the pivot option in Tableau Desktop. However, I find it to be extremely useful, and I'll give you a couple of actual higher ed work use cases so you can understand why I think it's still extremely useful. So I was able to create MadLibs because of that add-in and also because of parameters. So we're going to start with Excel. I always start in Excel. Here we have the lyrics to Frosty the Snowman. So we have one line for every row. So we have added this column that is the line number, and then we have the lyrics. So we're just going to use the text to columns and split this out on the using a delimiter, as that would be the space. So now we have one word in each cell. I went ahead and added the numbers for all of the columns across the top. We still have our lines down the column A. So the important part that I have to emphasize with this Tableau add-in for Excel is that when you use it to pivot your data, you absolutely cannot have any blank cells or it will screw everything up. So what I do is I go and highlight all of my cells, and I use the replace option and just pick some sort of symbol that I know is not in my data, that I know I can find and easily remove. So I'm going to replace all the blanks with an asterisk. And it doesn't like that because I already did it once. All right, there we go. So they've replaced all of my blanks with an asterisk. And now I want to pivot this data. You'll see across the top there is the Tableau tab. So they call it reshape data. In Prep, it's called pivot. So when you reshape your data, you want to put your cursor on the first cell where there is actual data, not a header, but the first cell, there's data. And when you click on reshape data, it will tell you that. It will point out to you, this is where you want your cursor to be. And it makes you double check before you hit OK. So you hit OK, it transitions all of your rows into, all of your columns into rows. So I'm going to go in and relabel column 2. This is going to be word. So we have a line number and a word number. Should I call it word number? And then column 3 is our words. So before I get too far into this, I want to show you one other feature that I love about the Tableau add-in, and that is the fill down. Now, if you have ever had to submit data to the National Student Clearinghouse, you know they have an extremely specific format that you have to follow. And every single time that I submit data to the clearinghouse, I use this fill down option. So, you know, in Excel, you might have, you know, a term and then a list of IDs and all these blanks where that term should be duplicated or filled down next to all of the student IDs. And yeah, you can just double click on each one and fill it down automatically. But what if, you know, you have 10,000, 20,000 rows of data? You don't necessarily want to have to do that. So the fill down option takes your 2020 and fills it down until it comes to the next unempty cell. And then it takes that one and fills it down to the next unempty cell all the way down to the bottom of the data. So you just put your cursor at the top of the column where you want to fill down and click fill down. You can do it with multiple rows at the same time. So here I have some dates and some change codes. We want to fill down both. There we go. So much faster than using your double click in Excel. And when it comes to dates and numbers, sometimes that will just add on the next number or add on the next day. And fill down doesn't do that. Fill down keeps that same consistent date or number or word or letter, whatever it is. It does not make any changes. So that is even better than the reshape data option, in my opinion. All right, so here we'll go back to our transpose data. We have our line number, our word number, and our words. And then I just take this and go through and decide which words in the lyrics I want to replace for our MadLibs. I recommend that you try not to replace words that rhyme unless you're going to somehow work that into the prompt. And the prompt is going to be a parameter, as we're going to see in a little bit. And try not to pick words that are too essential to this song. It's taken me a long time to get better at this part of the MadLibs process. I also just create a flag column that is a simple why if we're going to replace this word with a parameter word. And that is optional. I do that so that I can easily change the color of the text so that when I'm going through and building this, it is easier to just find those pieces and check all my work behind the scenes to make sure it's all correct. So, like I said, I did this before Tableau Prep was a thing, but now that Tableau Prep is available, it's just as easy and fast and possible to do it in Tableau Prep. So here is our original Excel with just our line and our lyrics. So we go into Tableau Prep. We use the split command to split our lyrics out using a space as a delimiter. And then we take that and we pivot all of those split lyrics into a column. In our cleanup step, we will go through and rename some of our fields, and you can create a calculated field to be the flag and the replacement word. However, I will caution you that if you select a word that appears multiple times in the song, it will replace every instance of that word. So in some sense, it's actually easier to do that in Excel than it is to do it here in Prep. And then we aggregate the fields that we need and output that data to create our MadLibs in Tableau. All right, so now we're actually going to build our MadLibs. So starting here, and we are using our Excel data, we're going to put our line number onto rows and then our word number onto columns. And then we're going to take our words and put those in the text. And that's more or less just to make sure that everything looks correct. And I actually have this backwards. Word number should be at the top. All right, so we just read through, make sure everything is looking correct. And I will make this a little bit bigger for you. And that's when I like to add this flag to the color so that I can see which words I'm going to be replacing in the song as we're going along. All right, so then I also like to create this calculation that is essentially your XY coordinates, your line number and your word number. And I use that when I'm creating the parameters so that I can identify where the parameter needs to go. So in the Excel, I have this replace with column in that name, adjective, noun, object. That is your parameter prompt. And that is how I typically title the parameters when I'm creating them. So back here, I've already created a few: name, number, and noun. So if we want to open this, and you can see when I created this parameter, it is a string parameter. You allow all values. And typically I have it set to have a blank current value, but I've already pre-filled these just for time's sake. So I haven't gone through and created all of the parameters for the entire thing because there are, as you can see, quite a few. But after you've created all your parameters, you write a calculation that I call parameter replacement. And essentially you take, if your replace with equals name, then you replace it with name. If it equals number, then you replace it with number. If it's noun 5,5, then replace it with noun 5,5. Sorry, if your line number is 5 and your word number is 5, then you replace it with noun 5,5, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This calculation usually gets to be about a page long if the whole thing's written out. And then you take that calculation and replace your words in the text box with the words from the calculation. And if there is no word in the parameter, then it would just be replaced with, or not replaced at all, it would just be the word that's supposed to go there. So then you build your page out where it just has your empty parameters for people to fill in. I generally put a navigation button here. Once they've filled out all the empty parameters, they can navigate to the new page with all of the words of the song. I like to format this to, be transparent, not have any of this shading, make sure all of your words fit in, just basic formatting procedure. You can do the same thing bringing in your Tableau Prep. You just build it out the exact same way. But what I didn't like about this method is all of this is so very, conform to line. It doesn't flow. There's all this odd spacing and, sometimes your words don't quite all fit. Like here, these words run into each other because they're longer words and they just don't fit in that space that's allowed. So finally this year, and I don't know why it took me this long, but finally this year I came up with a third way to build this that doesn't have all this formatting gibberish and is actually much faster and easier and doesn't take much prep at all. So the way to do that is just to copy and paste the lyrics straight into the text box and then bring your parameters in there and feed them into the text box as well. So the only limitation I have found here is that you can only fit so many words in your text box before it will say, we're cutting you off. So what I did is I just put one verse at a time, and then so I have the first verse and then the chorus and then the second verse. So for this one, I've only built out the first verse. Here it is where we have our name parameter, and this actually needs to go in every single place that Frosty appears. And you can format it any which way you want here. You can make it a different color. You can underline it, and you can just go through and replace it in every instance. And we don't have any other parameters to put in place here. So we already have our name, our number, and our noun. Those are the only three we have created. And we hit OK and see it has updated now. We have Leslie appearing multiple times in place of Frosty. So just to show you what the finished product looks like for this year. And this is not filled in. All right, so this is the page where you fill in the parameters, and then you click on the bells, and then it will give you your full lyrics. So that is just a quick overview of how to build MadLibs in Tableau. And I will stop my share now, answer any questions you may have before we move on to our next piece.
I've been working on something, Ginny, for our we just finished a campaign, and one of the things we're doing is building out a workbook to show this is how much money we raise in different areas, and we're trying to reuse the same charts. And I'm pretty much using the exact same method that you are for creating a fill in the blank, so we can just have a statement, we raised X amount of money from X type of donor, which, or from X number of donors of this type, right? So like each of those things is a parameter, and you're really just filling in the blank. So even though like this MadLibs was really great because it's all, it's holiday themed, but like there are lots of lessons that you can bring back to sort of real work from just playing with something that is so far away from the data that you normally work with, just to learn the skill and learn the different techniques for getting data in and out of Tableau. That was awesome.
I agree 100%. There are so many use cases for parameters in what I do. Another thing that I've done for work before was built an escape room in Tableau where, you have to use the filters and parameters and sets on a visualization to answer certain questions, and then you use those blank parameters to fill in your answer and check to see if it's correct. So
Looks like we do have some questions around the add-in. I found a link on the community forums for downloading the add-in. Do you know that if it works on a Mac by chance?
that I do not know.
All right.
You might find that information in the Tableau community, which is where I found the link to download the Excel add-in.
I think that's it for questions. There is a tip here that you might be able to overwrite the max word count by writing out text in Word and copying and pasting it into a box. One of the things I did on my project is, you know, I just have the whole string split into, let's say, 10 things where it's, you know, string argument I want to replace, string 2 argument I want to replace. So it's sort of, it's a similar thing where but you're breaking it out, not necessarily word by word, but chunk by chunk. And that can help with that limit too.
That is good to know. Like I said, I don't know what the mental block was. I never thought about doing it that way until this year.
Experience.
Mhm.
Cool. So I think we're ready to move on.
All right. So what's next is we would really love for you to fill out this very short survey and tell us what you thought of today's meeting. And also go ahead and sign up for our HE Tug on January 25th using, well, I'm guessing you're going to post those links in the chat. Awesome. We are still looking for a meet the community member for January. And we're also going to have tips and tricks from Anna. I'm not going to butcher her last name again, from Duke. She was our meet the community member last month, if you were here for that. And then we're also going to have a presentation on driving decision support within research administration from the University of Kentucky.
Just to add on for Alex's talk, it's actually a continuation or an expansion of what he presented on at Tableau conference in the, I want to say it was the visionary dashboard session, but honestly, I can't remember what any of those sessions were named. But it was one of the education track sessions.
So lots to look forward to in our January meeting. Here are some important links that we like to share out with you each time. Our site, our email where you can reach all of the co-leads at once, our Slack channel, which if you haven't joined yet, I don't know why, but it is a fantastic place. Our higher ed community forum, and also our HE Tug Tableau public site, which doesn't have much on it. So maybe I should post some MadLibs there or something. If anybody wants to collaborate on one or suggest a new song, that'd be great. All right, so if you want to stick around to do some breakout rooms, please do. If not, we understand. You might have some boring work to do for the rest of the day. That's all right. Deadlines are deadlines. So if you do want to stick around and talk for a few more minutes, we're going to have 2 breakout rooms. One where we're going to complete some MadLibs, which can be quite humorous, and one for just a general chat. So we're going to create both rooms, let you join whichever one that you would like, and just get to know some of your other higher ed folks.
We're not sure how many people are going to join in the chat, so there's a couple of versions of each room. If your room is empty, just move to the other one with the same name.
Scroll all the way down to the bottom if you are like me and could not find the rooms right away.
And thanks everyone for joining. We'll see you again next month.
Yep. Have a great holiday.